Now, this is some of the worst news we've gotten all season long. Teddy Blueger is out 6 to 8 weeks with a fractured jaw. I'm sure you guys have seen it, but first period versus the Jets, Brendan Dillon, which we will get into, but he goes into a hit Teddy Blueger kind of in a weird position, face first into the glass, kind of goes jaw first in a way. And, you saw all that blood. You knew from that point it was a bit more serious than just a regular injury. The blood with the mix of his reaction, the way he skated off the ice with that, you saw it in his face. You saw right away, you're like, you know what? Teddy Blueger is not coming back in this game, and he might not be back for a while. I was hoping I was wrong because I'm not a doctor, but the blood kind of gave it away. So yeah, I'm sure all of us had that reaction. 6 to 8 weeks, essentially 2 months. This should have been a penalty at least 2 minutes, at least, right? You can argue 5, and you might be right, and it should be a suspension at least 1 game. I'm not saying throw the book at this guy, but 1 game, right? It followed everything that you would need for a suspension happened on this play. And the evidence is right there. Look at the hit. The guy leaves both his feet as he's making the hit. And again, it doesn't matter if he's suspended or not. At the end of the day, Blueger's out 6 to 8 weeks. That's what the video is about. I could care less about Brendan Dillon. Now let's get on to the real story. Teddy Blueger, right? He's going to be out, like we said, almost 2 months. Thankfully for athletes, these guys are crazy. I'm convinced they're not human. They recover really quick compared to the average human being. I wouldn't be surprised if it's on the 6-week, part of the injury where he comes back, 6 to 8 weeks. I wouldn't be surprised if it is on the 6th week. Especially with the jaw. And again, you can't play around with the jaw. Jaw is really, that's a really pain. I could only imagine the pain he went through, right? We saw it with Sid way back. But, and I'm actually happy that I mentioned Sid, he came back a little earlier than he was supposed to with that, fishbowl. I wouldn't be surprised if Teddy Blueger, maybe at the 5th week, if we're lucky, maybe around there, even on the 6th week, in that ballpark, comes back with the fishbowl. But man, this is a big loss. The guy does so much. The Penguins have the #1 penalty kill in the league. He's a huge part for that. I'm actually really interested to see how this penalty kill performs in the next 2 months without Blueger. Would not be surprised if it goes down a bit. Like, in my opinion, Teddy Blueger is a top 5 penalty killer in the league. Might be the best, right? He's in there. Teddy Blueger, for me, is the best 4th-line center in the league. That's almost disrespect because he's not a 4th-line center. The Penguins just have so many great centers that puts him there. He's still one of the better 3rd-line centers in the league, too, if he were to play there. Just his defensive responsibilities, the ability to shut down top lines. And he does do a good job of that. And another thing that I've noticed from Blueger and what he's done really well is controlling his line. Whenever Blueger's on the ice, him and his line, I'm always finding them in the offensive zone, cycling the puck, getting shots on goal. They're one of the better defensive lines, but they don't really spend much time killing in their own zone because they just have you in your own zone chasing them. They're quick, and that's a really underrated thing about Blueger. He's the one controlling that. As the center, you have a big part of how your line performs. He's the one, and he's the reason why his lines always just perform well. He's a really good player. But, who's going to replace him, right? Are we going to go within the system? Maybe a trade? In my opinion, you don't need a trade. I don't think so. I mean, of course, Blueger's a big loss, but to make a trade for it, the good news about this is he will be back for the playoffs and well before the playoffs. When I think of replacements within the system, I think of one man and a guy that I wasn't too happy with when they first signed him because of his age and all that, but I actually have grown to like him a lot on the team, and that is Brian Boyle. It's a time like this where that Brian Boyle signing is actually a perfect signing from Ron Hextall. Brian Boyle was just brought in for the beginning because Crosby, Malkin were out. We had no centers. He was just going to fill in for that 4th-line spot, and we'd probably never see him again. But here we are, midway point in the season, and he's still here. But watching him play, he's actually not as bad as I thought he'd be. He's not bad at all. My main concern is he's old and he's big. So he's going to have a lot of weight to carry around, and older players aren't the fastest. And of course, he is a bit slower. It's kind of funny the way he skates around there. He is slower, but it's almost like he makes up for that because he's so big. A lot of times I see him, and he knows he's not fast enough to beat you to the puck, but he'll use the size to beat you to the puck. So that's a smart player. He knows he has a disadvantage with the speed, but let's not focus here. Let's focus here. Advantage, the size. It's actually crazy because speaking of these two guys in the video, Blueger, Boyle, the goal they scored last week in Vegas, Brian Boyle had a breakaway so slow. I'm shocked the defenseman didn't catch him. I thought he would, but the reason he didn't, Boyle knew how to use his size. The guy was trying to get around him. He couldn't because Boyle's so big, protecting the puck, Couldn't get around him. It led to that Teddy Blueger goal. He rarely makes mistakes. And even with the lack of speed, I always see him making the right play. Brian Boyle is just a smart player. He's just trapped in that huge old body of his. If you put him in a young man's body, I'm sure he's going to dominate the league because of that mind of his. But even now at his older age, he's a way more serviceable fourth line center, to replace Teddy Blueger. And overall, I think the Penguins will be fine, right? They've just been flying all season long. It's going to be a lot more than one injury to stop them, right? They've been having all sorts of injuries all year long. And, they're just incredible. But I would like to hear what you guys think, of everything, the hit. Do you think it's dirty or not? How are the Penguins going to be without Blueger? I'd love to hear your thoughts on all that, penalty kill. And, who's going to replace Blueger in your mind in the system? You guys agree with me, with Brian Boyle? Or is there someone else you think? Throw all that in the comments. And again, thank you so much for watching. And I'll see you in the next one.